Nox had worn the armor for so long that he'd almost forgotten what his own face looked like. The reinforced exosuit wasn't just protection, it was his identity. His shield against a universe that had learned to fear humanity. In the grand halls of the Valarian Empire, where crystalline spires reached toward twin suns and the air shimmered with bioluminescent particles, Nox was simply another armored mercenary, anonymous, unremarkable, safe. The war had ended 3 years ago, but its scars remained etched across the galaxy. Humanity had fought with a ferocity that terrified every other species in the known systems. When cornered, humans didn't surrender, they adapted, improvised, and struck back with a creativity that bordered on madness. The Galactic Council had eventually brokered peace, but the damage to humanity's reputation was irreversible. Now, humans were the monsters in bedtime stories told across 1,000 worlds. Nox had taken the job on Valaria because he needed the credits, and because his armor made him invisible. The Valarian royal family required security for the upcoming Luminescence Festival, and they didn't ask questions about who hid inside the combat suits. They only cared about competence, and Nox had that in abundance. Princess Alexa of House Luminara was nothing like he'd expected. Where other Valarian nobles drifted through their palace with the detached grace of beings who'd never known hardship, Alexa walked with purpose. Her skin held the characteristic silver-blue iridescence of her people, and her eyes those remarkable eyes that shifted from violet to amber depending on her mood, seemed to see through the polished corridors into something deeper. Nox first spoke to her during a routine security sweep of the royal gardens. She'd wandered away from her attendants, standing alone beside a fountain that defied gravity, water flowing upward in spiraling helixes. "You're different from the other guards," she said without turning around, somehow sensing his presence despite his armor's stealth capabilities. Nox's translator crackled to life. "I follow the same protocols, Your Highness. That's not what I meant." Alexa turned, and her eyes settled on his helmet's visor. "The others move like they're performing a duty. You move like you're hunting ghosts." He said nothing. Silence was safer than conversation. Over the following weeks, Alexa continued to find him during his patrols. She spoke of poetry written in bioluminescent ink, of philosophies that explored consciousness across different evolutionary paths, of her frustration with a court that saw her as a decorative piece rather than a person. Nox listened, offering occasional monosyllabic responses, always maintaining the barrier of his armor. "Why do you never remove your helmet?" she asked one evening as they stood on a balcony, overlooking the capital city's light symphony buildings that sang in coordinated waves of color. "Regulations." Nox lied. "I've read the security protocols. There's no such regulation." Her eyes shifted to a deep amber curiosity tinged with suspicion. "What are you hiding?" "Everyone hides something, Princess." "Yes," she agreed softly. "But most of us don't need a fortress to do it." The attack came during the Luminescence Festival, just as Nox had suspected it might. Radical elements within the Valarian military had never accepted the peace with humanity. They saw the festival with its themes of unity and reconciliation as an abomination. When the explosions tore through the western courtyard, Nox's training took over. He found Alexa in the chaos, surrounded by 3 attackers in combat gear. They hadn't expected resistance from the princess's guard. They especially hadn't expected Nox. The fight was brutal and efficient. Nox's armor absorbed plasma rounds that would have vaporized an unprotected body. His combat protocols, honed through humanity's desperate war, made him a hurricane of controlled violence. Within 90 seconds, the attackers were neutralized, but not before one had gotten lucky. A plasma lance pierced Nox's helmet seals, and the fail-safes triggered. The helmet hissed and separated, clattering to the marble floor. Nox stood there, breathing heavily, his human face exposed to Alexa's widening eyes. She stared at him, at the angular features, the asymmetrical face marked by old scars, the eyes that held colors no Valarian possessed. Recognition dawned like a terrible sunrise. "You're human," she whispered. Nox waited for the fear, the revulsion, the anger. He'd seen it before in the eyes of every species that learned what he was. Humans, the berserkers, the innovators of atrocity, the species that had introduced the galaxy to true horror. But Alexa's eyes didn't fill with fear. They shifted to a deep, contemplative violet. "All this time," she said, "stepping closer, you've been protecting me while hiding what you are. I didn't lie about my qualifications. No, you just let us believe you were something safer." She studied his face with an intensity that made Knox want to look away. "Do you know what I see?" Knox said nothing. "I see someone who's been carrying armor that weighs more than metal. Someone who's been hunted for the crimes of his species. Someone who's forgotten that individuals aren't responsible for the sins of their collective history." She reached out, hesitating just before touching his face. "May I?" Knox nodded, barely breathing. Her fingers were cool against his scarred cheek. "You're beautiful," she said simply. "Strange, yes. Different, absolutely. But beautiful in your difference. Your people will demand my execution when they find out. Let them demand." Alexa's eyes blazed amber gold defiance mixed with determination. "I'm tired of being the decorative princess. Perhaps it's time I became the princess who changed minds instead of simply reflecting light." Knox felt something crack inside his chest, not the armor, but something deeper that he'd kept protected for far longer. "Why?" he asked. "Because armor conceals many things," Alexa said, her hands still resting against his face. "But it can't hide courage. And you, Knox of Earth, are the bravest person I've ever met." In the distance, sirens wailed and emergency lights painted the sky. The festival was ruined, the peace was fragile, and Knox's secret was exposed. But standing there, unmasked before the alien princess who saw past his species to the person beneath, Knox realized that sometimes the most terrifying thing wasn't being discovered. It was being truly seen. And perhaps, he thought as Alexa smiled at him with those remarkable shifting eyes, being seen wasn't so terrible after all.